You approach the open book slowly, as though it might leap off the stand and wrap around your head like a particularly aggressive octopus. The pages flutter in anticipation. The whisper from the gramophone, or was it from the book itself, has faded, but its warning still hangs in the attic air like pipe smoke on velvet. The book is large and flat, its pages yellowed with the kind of age that implies someone once used it as a stepping stone to summon something regrettable. The open page is blank except for a faint, swirling mark in the center that pulses ever so slightly. You're fairly sure books aren't supposed to have pulses. Then ink begins to flow. Not from a pen or quill, just seeping up from the page itself. It curls into letters like fog turning into handwriting. One word forms, welcome, nope, you whisper, turning around. Behind you, another book opens. And another. Soon, the entire third floor is alive with the soft flick 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 of pages turning themselves. It's not a threatening sound, not quite. More like a room of people politely clearing their throats before giving you their full attention. The air is heavier now, laced with cedarwood, ash, and something medicinal, perhaps liniment rubbed on arthritic knuckles while poring over ancient texts. This attic smells like forgotten intellect, like the leftover scent of people who once thought big thoughts and were left alone too long to do so. You move toward the center of the attic, drawn in spite of yourself. There, displayed beneath a warped glass dome, is a curious object, not a book, but a small mechanical device, a rotating disc embedded with glyphs, levers, and what looks suspiciously like a quill dipped in dried blood. Meriju's voice reaches you from the floor below. Don't touch the automaton unless you want to write in languages you don't speak. Too late, you haven't touched it, but you've leaned close enough for the machine to detect your interest. The gears begin to turn on their own. The quill scratches across invisible parchment, leaving behind symbols that glisten and then vanish. You back away. Victorians, you must remember, were obsessed with mechanical wonder. Clockwork creatures, self-writing journals, phonographs that told bedtime stories in ghostly voices. There was a brief, but intense fascination with marrying industrial technology to the occult. One gentleman inventor in Sheffield claimed to have built a typewriter that channeled the thoughts of the dead. He disappeared shortly after receiving a manuscript that consisted of nothing but the word run repeated 12,000 times. Historians still argue whether that was a hoax, a haunting, or simply the world's most panicked novel. Back downstairs, you hear Meriju again. His voice is deeper this time, edged with urgency. You should come down now. You nod, though he can't see you, and begin to descend the rope ladder. As you climb down, the scent of the attic fades behind you, less like something dispersing, more like it's being sucked back into memory. Back on the second floor, the shop is darker than before. The gas lights flicker irregularly, casting jittery shadows that seem too tall for the objects they represent. You swear the typewriter display moved an inch to the left. Meriju waits at the base of the stairs, holding something tightly wrapped in cloth. When he sees you, he exhales. You stayed too long, he says. That floor, well, it's polite, but not harmless. You ask what's in the cloth. A buffer, he replies. Smell this. You hesitate, then lean in. The scent is immediately grounding. Fresh ink, warm bread, beeswax, and lavender water. It smells like a very tidy, very boring library. Safe? Harmless? Disarmingly normal. It's a first edition of Mrs. Beeton's Book of Household Management, Meriju explains. It neutralizes most paranormal atmospheres. Also quite good for removing ink stains and summoning Victorian nannies. You both laugh, and the tension releases, just a little. You walk together now toward the front counter. A few patrons mill about, each in their own curious haze. A young woman with hair like autumn leaves flips through a manual on hedge witchcraft. An older gentleman traces a finger down a map of fictional prisons. No one seems alarmed. Perhaps they, too, have met the whispering pages and the attic's gaze. Near the front window stands an iron-framed bookshelf marked books we found in the walls. You raise an eyebrow. Meriju shrugs. People hide things. And sometimes, things hide themselves. You lean in to examine the titles. A Guide to Escaping Through Fictional Landscapes, The Tea-Stained Prophesies, Volume 3, Volumes 1 and 2 not found, Diary of a Shop That Thinks It's a Person, How to Leave Quietly When the Plot Thickens. They all smell faintly of clay dust, cold plaster, and something metallic. Wall books have their own terroir. Point 1 in particular catches your eye. It's thin, hand-bound, with no title on the spine. The cover is stitched with what looks like human hair, not enough to be gross, but enough to raise questions. You pull it halfway free before Meriju gently taps your hand. That one bites, he says. And it tends to lie. You let go. In the corner of the shop stands a grandfather chair, tall-backed, worn, and carved with tiny astrological signs. Meriju leads you to it like a maître d' seating a favored guest. You sink into the cushions, which give off the scent of sandalwood, tobacco ash, and just the faintest note of milk chocolate. You feel immediately, absurdly safe. Every visitor, Meriju says softly, leaves something behind. You glance at him. Like what? A smell. A word. A thought. Sometimes, just a crease in a chair cushion that wasn't there before. Sometimes more. He leans forward. Books are not the only things that get catalogued. You start to ask a question, but something stops you, because you understand, the shop is watching, not maliciously. Not eagerly. Just observantly. It smells like cedar and ink and rain, and maybe, just maybe, it's writing you into its next volume. You sit quietly in the carved grandfather chair, your fingers tracing the ridges of a tiny satin etched into the armrest. The fire pops once, sending a plume of smoke into the air that smells, oddly, like toast. Not just any toast, your toast. The kind you burned last week, when you got distracted scrolling through videos of cats reacting to cucumbers. Strange how memory has sent. Across from you, Meriju lowers himself into a mismatched wingback. It's teal velvet with upholstery that puffs slightly when he lands, releasing the unmistakable smell of mothballs and anise. He sighs like a man who's been holding his breath since Queen Victoria's Silver Jubilee. You're adjusting well, he says. You nod, not entirely sure what you're adjusting to. The sounds have shifted again. The ticking clock seems slower now, almost lazy. Somewhere deep in the shop, a bell chimes, soft, off rhythm, as if trying not to interrupt your thoughts. Have I changed, you ask? Meriju chuckles. Not yet. But you are fermenting nicely. Well, that's comforting. The room breathes. Not literally, hopefully, but the temperature fluctuates like a lung expanding. Warmth, then a brief coolness, then warmth again. You realize it's sinking to your heart rate. You try to slow your breathing. The room obliges. Meriju watches you with that expression you're starting to recognize. Part curiosity, part approval, part let's see if this one makes it through tea without vanishing. He gestures toward a thick book balanced on the table between you. It's bound in navy leather, the spine studded with silver rivets. A brass clasp keeps it shut. This, he says, is the registry. You raise an eyebrow. Registry of what? Of every person who's ever stepped into this shop and left with more than they arrived with. You glance around. So, everyone? Not quite. Some people come in, browse a copy of the illustrated manual of peculiar mushrooms, sneeze twice, and leave. They remember none of it. Those are the lucky ones. He unlatches the clasp. The book opens with a gentle sigh, pages fluttering like wings settling after flight. The handwriting inside is impossibly neat, looped copperplate, impossibly consistent. Each entry lists a name, a date, and a phrase. Some of the phrases are mundane. Discovered a love for wind chimes. Others less so. Left with a map to a door that no longer exists. Or heard the last thoughts of a dying comet. You flip a few pages forward. June the 13th, 1881, Harold Trevor's briefly ceased existing. April 5th, 1927, Isabel Wren remembered a future. October 31st, 1970. Exchanged dreams for silence. You look up. I don't remember writing anything in this. Meriju taps his nose. The book writes you. Of course it does. You lean back, trying to process the idea that a registry book has been quietly cataloguing your emotional unraveling, and it might decide your defining trait is smelled a haunted crumpet. Somewhere between unsettling and oddly flattering, then, you hear it, the floorboards above groan, not like someone walking, but like something shifting position after a long nap. The third floor. Again. It's not quite calling you back, but it remembers you. Time to move, Merridew says. Every visitor follows a path. Yours isn't finished. You rise, reluctant to leave the safe gravity of the chair. The warmth fades the moment you lift your weight, as though the cushion was reluctantly letting go of your soul. Merridew leads you toward the back of the shop, past the spiral staircase, and the taxidermy reading owl, whose monocle, you notice, is now fogged over, into a narrow hallway lined with antique shop bells. They don't ring. They thrum, like they are vibrating at frequencies you're not entirely calibrated for. This section, Merridew says, wasn't originally part of the building. It grew. Ah, yes. The old sentient architectural expansion trope. The hallway smells sharply different here. Scorched paper, engine oil, and that tinny, metallic scent that lives inside grandfather clocks. There's also something you can't quite place, like burnt sugar with an undertone of static electricity. It tingles in your nostrils. You pass a shelf of books that are all vibrating softly. One is wrapped in copper wire. Another has a voltmeter embedded in the cover. The sign above reads, "The Experimental Period." Victorian science, Merridew murmurs. Before it became modern science. This is the era of galvanism, phrenology, mesmerism, and mystical vivisection. You stop. Mystical what now? Merridew waves it off. Don't worry. Most of the books have been defanged. You pause in front of a slim volume titled, How to Listen to Electricity. The cover hums faintly. When you tilt it, the hum shifts pitch like a theremin. Further down the hall, the lighting changes. A soft, purplish hue takes over, gaslight filtered through amethyst. The scent of ozone sharpens. You're now surrounded by books that hum, glow, or rearrange their own pages when not being watched. One appears to be slowly growing legs. Victorians loved dabbling with the edges of science, Merridew says. They wanted progress, but also mystery. It was a golden age of curiosity, and sometimes of disaster. He stops in front of a display case. Inside is a glass jar filled with what looks like vapor and lightning. Cradled inside is a diary. The pages turn themselves every few seconds, despite being sealed away. That, he says, belonged to Dr. Eliza Carrington. She believed you could encode emotion into electricity. She tried to electrify sorrow and send it down telegraph wires. Claimed the result was a form of mood contagion. Some believe she invented the first emotional virus. Historians still argue whether she was mad, or simply a century ahead of her time. Her house burned down the day she tried to transmit euphoria into Parliament. You inch closer. The diary's turning slows as you approach. The vapor inside the jar pulses, brighter when you exhale near it. It feels like the book is waiting for your mood. You step back. I think this one's reading me, you murmur. Merridew smiles, pleased. Good. That means it trusts you. Down the hall, you see a doorway framed in copper and wood. Beyond it, a small chamber pulses with flickering blue light. You're not sure why, but your heartbeat responds like you've just heard your own name whispered at a party. The electromancy room, Merridew says. Time flows weirdly in there. Only stay a minute. You hesitate, then step in, and the door shuts behind you. The door closes with a soft click, and immediately, everything changes. Your ears pop. The air grows dense, like you're underwater, or inside a battery right before it decides to short-circuit. Your hair lifts slightly, the fine strands rising toward the ceiling as though you've walked beneath an invisible balloon. You haven't, unless the shop has begun hosting unseen children's parties. Always a possibility, really. The electromancy room hums. It's not just a sound, it's a presence. A low, steady vibration that resonates somewhere deep in your molars. The walls pulse with veins of cobalt light, tracing circuits in the wooden panels. The floor beneath your feet is copper inlaid with concentric symbols, some geometric, some more interpretive. Victorian electromancers, it turns out, were less concerned with scientific rigor and more interested in results that made the hair on your arms stand up. And possibly set your wallpaper on fire. In the center of the room stands a peculiar device, a writing desk fused with coils, gears, and an arc lamp currently flickering like it's nervous about your presence. On the desk sits a metal pen, suspended in mid-air, quivering ever so slightly. Above it floats a single sheet of paper. Not resting on the desk, above it. Hovering. Slowly turning, you take a cautious step forward. The room smells of ozone, old leather, and something startlingly sweet, like candied violets dipped in battery acid. A signature scent if there ever was one. The paper flutters as you approach, and the pen lowers itself gently until it hovers just above the page. Then, without warning, it writes, your name. In elegant, spidery script, you flinch. But the pen continues. A sentence forms below your name, observed anomaly. Frequency receptive. Initiate tether. Okay. That sounds mildly threatening. You look over your shoulder, expecting Merridew to be smirking in the doorway, but you're still alone. Just you and a room that's apparently aware of your frequency. Whatever that means, the air thickens, tiny blue sparks flicker between your fingertips and the desk's edge. The pen now writes faster, lines curling across the page like a furious stenographer taking dictation from an invisible boss. A date appears. Then another. Then a place you've never visited, but which sounds oddly familiar. A crossroads in Kent. A station platform in Prague. A red door in a dream you had 6 years ago. Okay, this is too specific, you whisper. Victorians, particularly those obsessed with electromancy, believed the universe was a vast web of pulsing connections, some emotional, some temporal, some entirely made of tea fumes and raw nerve. They thought emotions could be converted to energy, and that thoughts, real thoughts, could be transmitted like lightning. Which sounds ridiculous until you remember radio waves are, in fact, invisible voices flying through the air. Just because you're used to it doesn't mean it's not absurd. Historians still argue whether the first electromancers were brilliant visionaries, or simply people who sniffed too much mercury gas in the name of science. The lights dim, not ominously. More like the room is squinting at you. The desk shifts. It rotates slowly, aligning its compass rose inlays to your position. You feel a gentle tug, not physical, but gravitational. Emotional, maybe. Like you're being drawn forward by a memory you haven't had yet. The pen stops, the page folds itself neatly, seals with a small jolt of static, and drops gently into a brass compartment on the side of the desk. You hear a soft ding. A hatch opens, revealing a small envelope with your name embossed in silver. You hesitate, then take it. Inside, the card reads simply, confirmed. Proceed to memory binding. Your eyebrows try to leap off your face. You don't know what memory binding is, but it certainly doesn't sound like something that comes with a complimentary biscuit and a cup of tea. As you step back from the desk, the copper circuit beneath your feet glows. A door opens in the far wall. You didn't even see the seam before. Behind it, a narrow hallway lit by glowing filaments that pulse with what can only be described as emotional voltage. You walk forward. The hallway is lined with framed photographs. Except they shift as you pass. Not with motion, but with context. You see images from your childhood, memories only you would recognize, your old bike, your neighbor's odd cat, that time you tried to build a raft from twigs and ambition. The scent here is uncomfortably specific, your grandfather's pipe tobacco, the shampoo your mother used, the plasticky smell of your school pencil case. The memories aren't just visual. They engulf you. Victorians believed that memory had a smell. That the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, was directly linked to the olfactory system not just anatomically, but magically. That a strong enough scent could transport you not just to a recollection, but to a moment. You reach the end of the hall. Another door. This one carved with letters that shimmer differently depending on your angle. Sometimes they spell memory binding. Sometimes do not proceed. Sometimes just your own name, repeated endlessly. You open it. Inside is a room made of mirrors. But they don't reflect your face. Each mirror shows a version of you at a different point in time, some recognizable, some strange. In one, you're older, hair streaked with silver. In another, you're younger, laughing, wearing a shirt you don't even remember owning. In yet another, you're wearing something vaguely Victorian. Holding a book. Looking back at yourself, you flinch. The room hums with quiet recognition. A circle of antique chairs surrounds a plinth in the center, upon which rests a book with a lock. The key is dangling from a silver chain around your neck, which wasn't there a moment ago. You don't remember putting it on. You don't remember choosing any of this. But that's the point. Memory binding, it seems, is not about remembering what you know. It's about what knows you. You take the key and unlock the book. Inside, the pages are blank, until you breathe, then lines appear. Memories, moments, thoughts you've forgotten. A picnic. A song. A page from a story you wrote in your childhood and threw away. It's your book. Or it was. Now it belongs to this place, and somehow, you're okay with that. You sit, and the mirrors fade to darkness. It takes you a moment to realize you're no longer alone in the mirror room. There's no dramatic entrance, no swirling mist, no haunted violin sting. Just a figure. Already seated across from you in one of the antique chairs. He, she. They are wrapped in a long, velvet coat that shifts colors with the light, somewhere between burgundy and midnight. Their face is shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, and where their eyes should be, there's a glimmer. Not threatening. Not even eerie. Just reflective. The figure gestures to your book. Keep going, they say, voice soft, distant, familiar. You look down. The pages are still filling in, ink sketching out memories you didn't know you still carried, like that forgotten birthday where nobody showed up, except your dog, who wore a paper hat. Or the time you ran from a thunderstorm and swore the lightning was chasing you. Somehow, even your old fears are catalogued here. Not to haunt, but to honor. Why show me all this, you ask? The figure shrugs. The shop doesn't take anything you can't afford to lose. That would be comforting if you were sure what that actually meant. The mirror nearest to your right flickers. It now shows you standing somewhere else entirely. A cobbled street glowing under gaslight. Steam curling from a grate. You're holding the book. But your eyes look older. Not just physically. Like you've seen something. Is that the future, you ask? The figure tilts their head. A possible one. The shop doesn't deal in absolutes. Of course it doesn't, you mutter. That would be too helpful. You watch your mirrored self pause beside a narrow storefront, different than this one, but familiar. The sign above the door is in Latin. The book in your arms pulses faintly, its glow reflecting in your eyes. Then the mirror goes dark. You stand. You have to. The chair's too heavy with memory now, and your muscles are buzzing like you're still plugged into some unseen current. You step toward the door opposite the one you entered from. It swings open soundlessly. Beyond it is a staircase, and as you climb, the air grows warmer again. Familiar, you recognize the scent before anything else. Books. Ink. Tea leaves and lemon peels. The unmistakable combination of Victorian-era mustiness and something faintly sweet, like cinnamon clove. And under that, you, whatever this journey has been doing to you, the shop has picked up your trail. It's braided your presence into its sensory palette, and you're now part of its essence. Congratulations. You're officially aromatically entangled. The staircase ends not in another room, but a corridor that slopes upward like a ship's gangway. There are framed prints on the walls, but when you stop to look, the images shift. Pages from books you've read, titles you once saw in dreams, lines you didn't know you'd memorized. One poster simply says, "It waits upstairs." Excellent. The final door is painted black, with gold detailing in the shape of a spiral. You reach for the knob. It's warm, inside, it's the attic. Or at least a space pretending to be one. Sloped beams. Dust motes dancing in shafts of afternoon light. Trunks. Boxes. An old harp missing half its strings, and in the middle, one last table. This one isn't polished or curated. It's worn, scuffed, slightly uneven. Sitting on it is a collection of sound devices: an Edison cylinder phonograph, a wax drum recorder, a metal horn speaker, a gramophone, and, oddly, a small, modern cassette player with your initials scratched into the side. You blink, the gramophone crackles to life. A voice emerges. Not Meridew. Not the reflective stranger. Yours, you, reading something, and the book remembers what the reader forgets. Ink stores what the heart discards. The pages are soft with nostalgia, hard with regret, and soaked in the subtle sweetness of moments never fully lived. You glance at the table. The wax cylinder spins slowly. The Victorians, ever obsessed with immortality, were fascinated by early sound recording, not just for novelty, but for what it meant, that a voice could outlast the body. That breath itself could be bottled, preserved, and replayed long after the speaker had turned to dust. Some believe that listening to these recordings too often could weaken the veil between now and then. Historians still argue whether Edison's lost ghost phone was just a marketing ploy, or a sincere attempt to contact the dead. The cassette clicks, you flinch, your voice again, younger this time. Reading a letter you don't remember writing. If I ever find the place again, I'll leave a message for myself. I won't trust my memory. I'll trust the shop. You sit down. There's a pair of headphones resting beside the tape deck. They look ancient. You half expect them to smell like copper and existential dread. You slide them on. Instantly, the attic fades, not visually, but acoustically. The sounds inside the headphones override reality. You hear laughter in slow motion, a thunderstorm you once slept through, the sound of your own footsteps echoing off cobblestones in some place you don't remember visiting, but miss terribly. Voices murmur around the edges. A lullaby. The scrape of a chair. The rattle of a key in an old lock. And over it all, pages turning, rhythmically, constantly. A soft reminder that time moves even when you don't. You take off the headphones. The room returns. Meridew is standing in the doorway, arms folded, that ever-patient smile on his face. You've done well, he says. Did I pass something? In a manner of speaking. Most people never make it to this room. You listened. That's rarer than you think. You open your mouth to respond, but he shakes his head. Come, he says. The shop has one last gift. As you follow him down the slanted attic steps, you feel a strange heaviness in your limbs, not exhaustion, not fear. Something closer to gravity. Not pulling you down, but holding you here. You reach the ground floor again. The lights have softened. The smells are warmer, toastier, even. Like someone's just brewed tea and opened a fresh book of poetry. Meridew stops at the front desk. On it sits a book, not the book from before, your book, now bound. Closed. Embossed with a title, Euline in.it reads, Chapter 1. You glance up. The shop keeps the rest, Meridew says. But this part is yours. You take it. The cover is warm in your hands. Outside, the light has changed. It's dusk again, or nearly. You didn't notice how long you'd been inside. You open the door, and the bell above it rings. For the first time, you hear its full sound, rich, golden, led like a chorus of all the moments you've just lived. You step into the fading evening, the book clutched to your chest, and for the first time all day, you realize you're smiling. The door closes behind you with a quiet click, softer than you expect. Almost apologetic. Like it knows this chapter is ending, and it's not quite ready to say goodbye either. You stand there for a moment on the narrow street, the book warm in your hands, the sky deepening into indigo. You look back, the shop is gone. Not gone. Just different. The windows are dark. The lettering on the glass has faded into blankness. It could be any closed shop now. A tailor's. A knick-knack store. One of those places that always seems to be under renovation, but never actually changes. You blink. Your reflection stares back. A little disheveled, maybe. But changed, something still buzzes beneath your skin, like static, or caffeine, or memory itself trying to settle. You walk. The cobbled lane feels quieter now. Not abandoned, just quieter. Like the whole city is holding its breath. Street lamps flicker on, casting golden halos onto the damp stones. You hear footsteps, not yours, echoing in the distance, but no one appears. Somewhere a cat yowls with operatic self-importance. A perfect little Victorian night soundtrack. You pass a bakery. The scent of warm bread makes your stomach growl in protest. How long have you been gone? Time's a tricky thing when you've been in a place where clocks bend themselves politely out of the way. You sit on a bench, the book resting on your lap. You open it, just to the first page. No words, just a smell. Faint ink. A trace of lavender. Maybe even that vanilla honey mixture from the old rare books room. You exhale, the sounds of the shop still ring faintly in your ears, the scratch of pen nibs, the distant hum of copper circuits, the rustle of a page turning itself. The peculiar thud of a memory being laid gently on a shelf. Victorian shops weren't just shops. You realize that now. They were theaters. Cabinets of curiosity. Memory palaces disguised as commerce. Places where the boundaries between customer and character blurred. Did you buy something in there? Or did something buy you? Victorians loved a good paradox. You hear footsteps again. Someone pauses by the bench. You glance up. It's a child. Maybe 7 years old. Big coat. Too big. Holding a small red book, worn at the edges. They stare at you for a moment with that wide, utterly unbothered gaze only children seem to manage. Did it let you keep yours? They ask. You blink. My book. They nod solemnly. Mine only let me keep the ribbon. You look at your hands again. There, tied around the book's spine, is a ribbon. Deep blue. You're fairly certain it wasn't there before. The child grins, then walks off down the street and vanishes into the fog. Because of course there's fog now. You half expect a top-hatted detective to step out of it dramatically, but the street remains quiet. You lean back. And that's when you hear it, one last sound. A whisper. No words. Just the whisper itself. Like the rustle of turning pages. Like memory folding gently into place. You realize you're not afraid. Not confused, just full, and suddenly, wonderfully tired. Maybe it's the long walk. Maybe it's the emotional roller coaster of self-reflection and psychic electromancy. Or maybe it's the simple exhaustion of being seen by a building full of ghost-scented books and highly judgmental phonographs. Either way, it's time to rest. You make your way back to wherever home is for you now. An inn, a flat, a guest room with too many chintz cushions. You curl into bed, the book on the nightstand beside you. Still warm, and when you finally drift off to sleep, you dream, not of monsters, or lost alleys, or impossible mirrors, but of pages turning. Of soft lamplight. Of stories being gently shelved in rooms you might never find again, but which will always, somehow, remember you. And now, as the dust settles and the street grows still, the bookshop slips back into whatever shadowy fold it came from. Maybe it's waiting for the next curious wanderer, someone just like you, someone who thinks they are just killing time between cafes, but who ends up finding a story far too big to carry in one sitting. The smells still linger in your memory, don't they? A trace of peppermint ink. A little singed cedar, maybe even that leathery whisper of a ghost too polite to introduce itself, and the sounds, the soft chime of the door, the distant gramophone, the unmistakable creak of a floorboard that always knows where you're standing. You can let those sounds fade now. Gently. No need to chase them. You've seen enough tonight. Your book is closed. Your story, for now, is written. And even if you don't remember every twist, every room, every dusty shelf, the shop remembers. That's what it's for. So take a deep breath, let your mind ease off the gas. Let it wander. Let it rest. You don't need to solve the mystery. You don't need to hold on to every detail. Sometimes, the most magical places are the ones that vanish quietly when you're not looking, and if, someday, You find yourself on an unfamiliar street, and a crooked little sign in a foggy window catches your eye. Well, you'll know what to do. Now go ahead. Stretch your toes. Tuck in that shoulder. Let the night hum softly around you like a lullaby written in dust and time. Close your eyes. You're home.